In the heart of Central Africa, far beyond the reach of modern maps, there lies a village known only by whispers, Numba. Hidden behind dunes and ancient forests, it is said to be a place where faces never change. Not because time stands still, but because the people themselves share one single face, passed down through generations like a curse or a gift. The few explorers who claim to have reached Numba describe it as if stepping into a dream carved from heat and silence. The air feels heavy, alive, thick with an energy that hums beneath the skin. The sound of drums echoes faintly from nowhere and everywhere. But it's the faces that haunt them. They say every man, woman, and child there carries the same expression, soft, distant, and strangely familiar. Eyes deep as the night sky, lips that barely part when speaking, skin with a golden hue that catches the sun like glass. Even their smiles, gentle, almost knowing, mirror each other perfectly. At first, outsiders believe it's an illusion, a trick of the mind or of the light. But then they notice the elders and the infants, and still the same face. Some scientists once tried to explain it. They said it might be genetic isolation, a community so closed off that the bloodline simply folded back on itself over centuries. But that doesn't explain the details. The faces are not just similar, they are identical, as if sculpted by the same invisible hand. Legend says it began long ago, before maps, before even language took its full shape. A story told by the old storytellers of Mali and the Congo speaks of a wandering woman, a healer who crossed the desert carrying a mirror made of volcanic glass. She offered reflection to those who had never seen themselves before. But when the people looked into it, they did not see their own faces. They saw hers. She was known as Asha of the Mirror, and those who gazed upon her gift were said to lose their reflection forever, becoming part of her, in body and soul. It is said Asha settled in Numba, built her hut beside the sacred baobab, and from her children came an entire bloodline. Her face, multiplied through time, the villagers themselves do not speak of it as a curse. To them, it is a form of unity. They believe they are one soul, reborn endlessly, the same spirit wearing the same face in different lives. They say death is just the moment when Asha calls them home to prepare for their next birth. Travelers describe a strange ritual that takes place at dusk. When the sun sinks into the horizon, the villagers gather by the tree of mirrors, hundreds of shards of polished stone hanging from its branches. They chant softly, a melody that seems to vibrate the air. The wind turns warm, the reflections tremble, and for a moment, those watching from afar claim to see their own faces reflected in the shards, until the image fades, replaced by hers. What no one can explain is why no photograph of Numba has ever surfaced. Cameras taken their stop working. Lenses fog over. Film burns white. Only sketches remain, drawn by trembling hands, each one eerily consistent, the same face again and again. Some say Numba doesn't exist in the same flow of time as the rest of the world, that the village sits at the edge of what physicists call a temporal fold, a place where memory solidifies and identity repeats itself endlessly. Others believe it's not a place at all, but a reflection of something within humanity, our fear of losing who we are and our desire to be remembered forever. There are stories of those who stayed too long, explorers who entered the village and, when they returned, their features had changed, just slightly, a curve of the mouth, a glint in the eyes, until one day they no longer recognized themselves in the mirror, and those who returned to Numba never come back again. As night falls, the wind carries whispers across the desert. They sound almost human, almost like voices singing the same note in perfect harmony. Perhaps it is only the wind, or perhaps it is Asha herself calling softly through the sand, reminding the world that her face was never meant to fade. In Numba, time moves in circles. The dead are never gone, and the living are never truly born. They are all one, endless reflections of the same eternal face. For decades, no one dared to go back to Numba, not after what happened to the first research team. In 1972, an expedition funded by a private European foundation ventured deep into the interior, guided by local trackers who refused to enter the last 10 kilometers. They said the wind carried the voices of ancestors there, and that anyone who crossed that invisible border would never be seen again. The team was led by Dr. Ilara Finch, a cultural anthropologist known for her work on isolated tribes. She wasn't interested in myths, she wanted truth, or at least something that could fit into a report. But the deeper she went, the more the desert began to change her perception of time itself. They would walk for hours under the blazing sun, only for the shadows to stay the same length. The sky didn't move. Even their watches began to tick slower, almost like the air was thick enough to drag time down with it. At night, the moon rose, full, glowing, the same moon again and again. On the 7th day, they reached Numba. The first thing they saw were faces in the dark, illuminated by torches. Men and women of perfect symmetry, their expressions calm, unbothered by the sudden arrival of strangers. Ilara described it later as looking into a hall of mirrors that had learned to breathe. She tried to speak through a translator, but the villagers did not answer in words. They responded with a kind of humming, low, resonant, vibrating in the chest more than in the ears. It was impossible to tell who the sound was coming from. It seemed to echo from everywhere at once. Her assistant, Julian, began to panic. He said he saw his own face among them. Not similar, but exact. Same eyes, same scar above the brow. Ilara dismissed it as exhaustion. But that night, as they made camp, she saw something that shattered her skepticism. A child from the village stood at the edge of their firelight. He smiled, the same faint, knowing smile they had all seen before, and whispered her name. She had never told it to anyone in the village. When she approached, the child stepped back and raised a small mirror made of black stone. Her reflection didn't move. It looked back at her, calm, steady, breathing out when she breathed in, and then it smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that came a second too late. She stumbled back, gasping. The child disappeared into the dark. The next morning, Julian was gone. His tent stood open, his clothes folded neatly beside his bed. The only thing left was his camera. Every roll of film inside it burned white, except one. A single frame. A blurry image of him standing among the villagers, his face indistinguishable from theirs. Ilara tried to leave that day, but the paths seemed to shift. The desert rearranged itself. No matter how far she walked, she always ended up back at the same clearing, the baobab tree at the heart of Numba. By the 3rd day, her team stopped speaking altogether. They simply watched her silently, with the same calm expression as the villagers. Their faces were changing, slowly, subtly, like wax softening in the heat, reshaping itself into something familiar. In her final diary entry, recovered years later by a nomad who found the remnants of their camp, she wrote, "I can no longer tell where they end and I begin. When I close my eyes, I see my reflection standing beside me. It breathes, it whispers. It wants me to remember that the face I wear is not mine anymore." The diary ended there. No one ever found her body. Months later, local traders reported seeing a woman in white walking through the dunes near Numba. She carried a mirror of black stone and never spoke. Those who saw her said she smiled gently, the same way all the villagers did, and when the wind lifted her veil, her face was perfectly identical to every other soul in that place. The legend grew stronger. Some said Asha had been reborn in her. Others whispered that Ilara Finch had never existed at all, that she was only the next reflection in the eternal mirror. Today, villagers from nearby lands still avoid the area. They claim that at night the sand becomes glass, thousands of tiny mirrors glinting under the moonlight. And if you stare too long at one of them, you'll see not your reflection, but someone else's, a stranger, smiling back. The few who dared to test it, photographers, wanderers, thrill-seekers, all reported the same experience. their cameras would freeze. Their batteries drained instantly, and sometimes, when reviewing the footage, there would be a single frame, a glimpse of their own face looking back at them, but older, calmer, almost divine, as if Numba wasn't just reflecting who you are, but who you are meant to become. Long before the name Numba was ever spoken, this land was said to belong to a woman who carried no shadow. Her footsteps left no prints, and her voice echoed even when she stood still. Her name was Asha, the first mirror. The elders say she came from the stars. Others say she was born from the desert itself, carved out of sunlight and obsidian. Whatever the truth, she appeared one night during a storm that split the sky in half. When the rain fell, it turned the sand into glass, and in each shard the villagers saw her face, reflected 1,000 times over. They say she did not speak for 7 days. She simply walked among them, touching their cheeks, whispering something in a language no one had heard before, a language that felt more like a vibration than a sound. And when she finally spoke, her words burned themselves into the air. There is only one of us. The rest are echoes. From that moment, no child born in Numba ever had a unique face again. Every newborn carried the same eyes, the same mouth, the same calm expression, as if they were all fragments of Asha herself. The villagers never questioned it. To them it was sacred. They believed that individuality was a wound, a separation from the divine whole. To look the same was to be at peace, united in the image of the eternal mother. Generations passed, and Asha never grew old. She simply changed her clothes, her voice, her gestures. She was the grandmother, the daughter, the child, all at once. And those who looked into her mirror saw not their reflection, but their destiny. But then came the outsiders, strangers who brought machines, who tried to measure what cannot be measured. They wanted to capture her, to study her. They called her a myth, a phenomenon. And that was when the first curse began. Asha disappeared into the desert, taking the mirror with her. The sand rose like a storm behind her, swallowing the world in silence. When it settled, the strangers were gone. Only their shadows remained, burned into the ground like dark stains that never fade. Since then, Numba has been known as the village of one face, a place where time does not flow forward but inward, folding upon itself endlessly. Those who enter it are not trapped. They are absorbed, rewritten into the memory of Asha. The last person believed to have seen her was a local shepherd named Malu in the early 2000s. He said he followed the sound of singing carried by the wind and found a woman standing alone by a black mirror half buried in sand. She was neither young nor old. Her skin shimmered like dusk, and when she turned, he saw not one face, but many layered over each other like ripples in water. He asked her, trembling, who she was, and she smiled, the same faint, knowing smile seen by every generation before him. Her voice was soft, but it seemed to come from inside his chest, not his ears. "I am what you will remember when you have forgotten yourself." Malu fled that night. When he returned to his village, people gasped. He looked different. His features softer, unfamiliar, and in his eyes, that same calm, golden glint. He never spoke again. Since that day, people claim to see her walking the desert at dusk, the black mirror in her hands reflecting the sky upside down. Some say she guards the border between life and memory. Others whisper she is still searching for the next reflection that will carry her into eternity. But those who truly listen, who hear the wind as it hums across the dunes, know a deeper truth. Asha never left. She became the land itself, the sand, the silence, the heat that bends light until all faces merge into one, and perhaps that's the secret of Numba. It isn't about immortality. It's about oneness, the illusion that we are separate, when in truth we are the same story told in infinite forms. At dusk, the baobab still stands, surrounded by mirrors swaying in the breeze. If you walk close enough, you may see your reflection tremble. It will smile back at you, calm, timeless, unchanging. And for a brief, eternal second, you'll understand why no one in Numba ever ages, and why those who enter never return. because the village doesn't keep you prisoner. It simply reminds you of what you have always been, a reflection of the same eternal face.